Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, to the April Student Advisory Council meeting. It's so nice to see so many of you here in person. I was sharing with some of you who are a little cozy today because there are so many people here, but that is a wonderful problem to have. Of course, thank you for traveling to Frankfort today, and to your teachers and parents that might be accompanying you. We certainly appreciate them making time out of their schedule to allow you to join us. We have a very full agenda today, so I'll just share a little bit, and I was sharing with some of the students already. I am still having a great time acting as the interim commissioner as we prepare for our new commissioner to start on July 1st. He, of course, Dr. Robbie Fletcher, is superintendent in Lawrence County, and he will join us a little bit later in the summer, but because he's still doing all the things in Lawrence County that a superintendent has to do as we head toward the end of school. I know this is a really exciting time for our seniors as you head toward graduation, and we'll have some congratulations a little bit later in our agenda today, but it's quite an accomplishment to get to graduate from your high school, and it will be a moment filled a little bittersweet as you embark on the next great thing that you're going to tackle. But at the same time, I hope you will express appreciation to all the folks in your district and at your school that have really helped you achieve the greatness of high school graduation. We're going to do an icebreaker today. And the icebreaker is, and I appreciate Dr. Jones kind of helping getting me started on this, but I sort of wondered that we could do something almost like a time capsule. So what I'd really like you to do, as Dr. Jones calls the roll, is think about where you think you will be in 10 years from now. And you can start, if you already know, like if you're going especially to our seniors, if you know that you're going to a college or a university or directly into the workplace, if you would share that, and then think about, where am I going to be in 10 years? And I would love for us to capture this, and maybe 10 years from now, we'll look back and see where you are. We did this actually when I was in high school, where they asked us all where we thought we would be, and we looked back at that on our 10-year reunion for our class, and so it's just kind of cool. So take a minute, dream big, because you all are all great achievers in your own right. But if you'll share with us, as your name is called, sort of where, oh, I suddenly became really loud. If you can share with us, again, if you're going to you already know as a senior where you're going, kind of share that, and then let us know where you're going to be in 10 years. Dr. Jones, I'll ask you to call the roll, please.
Right, I look forward to hearing your responses. All right, I will now call the roll. Ava Benson.
Present. I am a senior, so I'll be attending Kentucky Wesleyan College in Owensboro, Kentucky, and major in business administration. In 10 years, I hope to be working with big corporations to help improve their diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Great answer.
Reese Blakeman. Owen Borden. Owen, are you able to hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, I'm here. My name's Owen, and I'm also a senior. I don't know exactly which college I'm going to yet. I'm deciding between two, but either way, I look forward to majoring in chemical engineering and hope to work to help design drugs that could treat diseases that are currently incurable.
Cameron Breyer. Owen Graham Cody. Hunter Combs. Hunter has shared in the chat. Here, my microphone isn't working, but in 10 years, I think I will be in my own classroom teaching my students here in Kentucky. Wonderful. Thanks, Hunter. Jude Dollock.
Here. I'm also a senior. I'm still deciding between two schools, but hopefully in 10 years, I'll be a nurse practitioner in like ICU, emergency, so critical care, and hopefully in a big city.
Great. Justin Dunning.
I'm also a senior, and I plan to go to Harvard in the fall. And so there's no telling where I'll be in 10 years, but I hope to graduate law school and then be somewhere, wherever they put me.
That's great. Rima Dutt.
Here, and I will be attending the University of North Carolina in the fall, studying public policy, and I hope to be a lawyer in Boston in 10 years.
Hannah Scarla.
I'm here, and in 10 years, I hope to be doing some sort of medical research. I'll probably go to university and then do my graduate program first, but
Thanks. Nicholas Hazlett.
Present. At that point, I'll be done with my 4-year degree at Morehead State in political science. Out of law school at that point. I don't know where yet. That's still up in the air and have time for, but I hope to be back in Eastern Kentucky, probably in Paintsville, representing people in some way or another, just the better lives in that way.
Thank you.
Onette Irakiza.
I'm here and I want to study. I'm a junior, so I still have time, but I want to study something with like international affairs or end up being an ambassador for the US. And my sister and I have always had the dream of living in the UK for like at least 2 years when we're older. So at that point, I'll be like 26. So I think that would be a good age to move there with my older sister and just have a little house and start a cute little life. So.
That's great.
Trey Avery Jackson. Peter Jefferson.
I'm here and I'm a junior as well, so I have a little bit of breathing room. But in 10 years, I think I'd like to be finishing up a Peace Corps assignment and going to work for an international aid organization to improve access to essential medicines for people who don't have access or may not be able to afford them.
Great. Shraman Carr. Vijay Kumar Karthikeyan.
I'm also a senior, so I haven't decided yet, but I'll probably be going to UCLA for computer science engineering. And I'm planning on, in 10 years, I hope to like teach in college environments and move to a big city.
Sophia Langford.
I'm a sophomore, so I still have a lot of time, but I'm hoping to get into Duke University and eventually become an ER doctor.
Danica Rose Love.
Here, I'm a senior and I'm going to the University of Kentucky in the fall to study biology, and in 10 years I hope to be a pediatrician.
Gabriella McAdams.
I'm still a sophomore, so in 10 years I'll probably still be in medical school, and then after that I'd hope to be specializing in gynecology.
Great. Constance Ray Martin. Anopa Musoni.
I'm a senior. I'll be attending Emory, but in 10 years, I'll probably still be in med school.
RJ Osborne. Tom B. Rakesh.
I'm here and I'm a junior, so I still have time, but in 10 years, I would also like to be a pediatrician.
Daniel Clay Ratley.
Here, I'm only a sophomore, so I still have a bunch of time, but in 10 years, I would really want to own a big business. I'm big on business, so I would love to do that. Yep.
Jocelyn Reddick.
I'm a senior. I'll be attending Murray State in the fall to study exercise science, and in 10 years, I'll hopefully be a couple of years into my profession as a chiropractor.
Great. Amy Roblera Perez. Sophia Staples.
I'm here. I'm a junior, but I want to be an astrophysicist. So in 10 years, I'll probably still be in school doing that. It takes a while, but yeah.
What's an astrophysicist?
It's just like there's a couple of different types, but it's like the physics of like stars or the universe as a whole, expansion, stuff like that.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
Ian Swenson. Sarah Umbarger. Austin Vidito.
Here, I'm only a sophomore. I want to go to the University of Florida, and I just want to be a teacher in Florida. So just anything with that.
Carly Watts.
Here, and in 10 years, I plan to be working with athletes and helping them get back on their recovery journey through sports medicine.
Bentley White.
I'm a senior. I'll just be graduating in like 3 weeks, so that'll be fun. I guess in 10 years, I will either be working somewhere in DC or being a foreign service officer. I mean, I'm not really sure, just something for the government.
Eliete Yanes Medina.
Hi, well, I'm a sophomore, so I still have a little time, but I would like to go to college and then go to medical school. I'll probably be either still studying something into a neuroscience field or pursuing a career, either of those two.
India Young.
I'm here. I'm a junior. My top school right now is Bellarmine University, so I hope to graduate from there with a sports broadcasting degree and hopefully be working in ESPN or just college sports in general.
And Joshua Zizek, who is online. Joshua is here. It's shared in the chat here. I am planning on going to Harvard in the fall, and in 10 years, I hope to be able to do software engineering at a startup. And roll call is complete.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all of your insights into what you'll be doing in the next 10 years. You all have really exciting futures ahead of you. I'll put in a plug for those of you that said you wanted to go to a big city or be out of state. Don't forget your old Kentucky home. We'd love to have, of course, your talents here in Kentucky servicing students and districts here, as well as just your communities. So it's always good to fly away, but remember to think about Kentucky in your future as well. Okay, I'll turn it over to the Mindful Minute is next, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over the minutes.
Just very briefly.
I'll turn it back over to Dr. Jones.
Just very briefly, you all have received by email the summary notes from our March 26, 2024 Commissioner Student Advisory Council meeting. Is there a motion on the floor to approve those minutes? I see a motion from Nicholas. Is there a second from Aliete? And we'll just do a voice vote. So all those in favor just say aye. Aye. And then any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. Thank you. And so now to our next agenda item with Dr. Michelle Searcy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I borrow your mic? Thank you so much. They told me I had to sit down, y'all, but I can't do it. I am so excited to spend this time with you all and to have the opportunity to close up such an amazing year with getting to work with each and every one of you. So I was listening to all of your goals that you have and everything that you want to accomplish in 10 years, and I am just blown away by your aspirations that you have and the mark that you're going to make on the world. And sometimes when we think about that 10 years from now and everything we want to accomplish in 10 years, that can be a little heavy. Exciting, but heavy and scary too. So I am going to take a pause for a second before we get into the Mindful Minute, and we're going to play. What? We're going to play because we learn better when learning is fun. And so I brought a conversation ball. This is a large group, so we're not going to be able to do it with everyone, but we are going to do a conversation ball. How many of y'all have used this before? Experts, I knew it. So we are going to toss the ball, not throw it, toss it. I don't know if we're going from one side, you might need to throw. You're going to catch the ball, and wherever your thumb lands, that's the question you're going to answer. If your thumb lands on a question that you're like, ooh, I don't know about this one, you have two thumbs. Pick the other one, whichever one the other one lands on. Okay, so let's do 7 or 8, and then we'll get into the Mindful Minute. Now, before I toss it, I'm going to make eye contact, make sure the person knows that that's who I'm tossing it to, and then we're going to answer it. Sound good? Okay, it's coming your way.
Very cool. Oh, Youth Light. Should I just choose another?
Oh, yeah, that's where I bought the that's where I bought the ball from. Yeah.
Favorite toy.
Maybe when
Probably-
you were a kid.
Okay. I really liked Beyblades. I had like 300.
Beyblade.
Of those. Yeah.
Beyblades.
Yeah.
Those were great until you stepped on them.
Yeah. So do I just?
Yeah, just pick someone, make eye contact, and let them know it's coming.
I am very happy when I like to embroider. I'm happy when I embroider things. Okay.
What did I land on? Favorite animal? I don't know.
It can be animal, insect, amphibian.
Not an insect person, let me tell you. I'll just say like a giraffe. They seem peaceful enough.
I'm excited when I do public speaking, so whenever I advance to another round, I get pretty excited then.
Which goes right in line with you wanting to be a broadcaster.
Oh, yeah.
I can see it.
I'm a talker.
I can feel it in your voice.
Yep, I believe in you.
There you go. Good
My hero would definitely be my dad. He's saved my life a lot of times and just has always been there for me, a good backbone to have.
Love that. Thank you.
Favorite subject? I would say probably chemistry. BJ.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
Favorite music? I like rock or hip hop.
All right, one more person.
I'm most excited when? Probably anytime I hang out with my sister.
Oh.
Yeah. She's like 9.5, so she always keeps me on my toes. Yeah.
Keeps you young,
By
right?
design, yeah.
That's good. All right, thank you guys for participating in that. So this year we started off talking about breathing techniques and how we can kind of calm our anxiety when we're feeling a little anxious or nervous about the future, things that we need to process. We've done some progressive muscle relaxation where we tense up and then let it go. And today we are going to do journaling. How many of you journal already? Nice. Okay. So journaling is a great way to be able to kind of process some of your thoughts, to think through of where you want to go for the future, kind of living in right here and right now. How many of you, when you go to sleep, your mind spins and sometimes it's hard to get it to slow down? Yeah. And have you ever heard anyone say, just grab a pencil and jot down what it is you're thinking about? If you haven't heard that yet, you probably will throughout your life. Another great component of journaling is it allows us to reflect and to be thankful for things that we have experienced, or thankful for those that helped us through different times in our life. So we're going to spend some time this morning and we are going to journal. Now on the paper that was just passed out to you, there are 4 prompts just to get you started. You do not have to use all 4 prompts. Maybe push for 1 or 2. Now there's lined paper on the front and the back. So if you go through and you answer one prompt on one side, you can answer the other prompt on the back. So just for our folks online, what those 2 prompts are is, what is one thing you have learned from your advisory experience? You guys have spent a whole year together in working with the commissioner, hearing how things work within the Kentucky Department of Education and education as a whole. So what is one thing you have learned from this advisory experience? Another question you might answer is, what is something you are grateful for this school year? It can be anything. It can be a person. It can be an experience. It can be something that you have learned or someone that you have connected with, but something that you are grateful for this school year. The third one is, what is something you look forward to in the upcoming years? So a lot of you have big transitions in life coming your way. That can be very exciting. A little scary, but very exciting. So what's something that you're looking forward to? Whether you are transitioning from 10th grade to 11th or 12th grade to college or whatever the case may be. And then lastly, what advice would you give the upcoming 24-25 Commissioner Student Advisory Group? Like if there was one piece of advice that you could, if you will to the upcoming class to help their experience, help them get the most out of their experience. So I want to give you about 10 minutes to reflect and journal. And then I'm going to ask if any of you want to share. Now, you do not have to share. Journaling is a very private part of processing your emotions and feelings and gratitude. But if you would like to share your thoughts, I would love to hear some of those. So I'm going to stop talking and give you about 10 minutes to journal and think through.
Something I'm looking forward to is attending GSP this summer. I've heard like so many good things about GSP and how it's like changed people's lives. And so I think that this opportunity will be good for me because I went to GSE last summer actually with Daniel, and it was a good experience for me. I learned a lot about myself, and I think taking this opportunity, being gone for 5 weeks with people I don't know, will help me branch out and like walk out learning more things about myself, and it'll also help me like determine if I want to go far for college or not, because I feel like being away from home that long and like in a different environment will help me decide if I want to stay in town or not. And then another thing is like being on this council and then also like going to GSP. It kind of just humbles you like in the eyes of your peers, because it shows that you're not the only one who wants big things for yourself, and like everybody sitting in this room has such big aspirations, and so it kind of just motivates me to like keep going and to like be as great as I know y'all are gonna be.
That is amazing. First, congratulations on being accepted into GSP. I have also heard that is a life-changing experience, and I hope to hear from you to hear how it changed your life and your perspective on next steps in your world. And I agree, all of you have such high ambitions and aspirations for your life. Like, I feel really comfortable and confident in the next generation that you guys are going to make our world a better place and continue to work hard to make sure that that happens. Okay, last question. What advice would you give the upcoming 24-25 Commissioner Student Advisory Group? Woo! We may need to collect some of these. Let's start with you.
I would just say to like not be scared to voice your opinion, because I think when you're coming into a new environment, you get really self-conscious, like, oh, like, is what I'm gonna say stupid or things like that. But just like recognizing your value and that like you were chosen on this council for a reason, and that this is a safe space that like we're actively trying to create change, and that's why you're on the council and that's why you were chosen.
And I'm so glad we're collecting that so that we can share that with the advisory next year. Your voices are powerful. They're important. We want to hear from you. Like, if we're talking about education, you are the most important voice that we can possibly get for education in the state of Kentucky. So it is powerful, it is important, and we definitely want to hear it. Thank you so much.
I think I had two big things. The first of which was that it's an advisory experience for both us and for the Department of Education. While it's in theory supposed to be us advising about topics and creating change, like you said, I feel as though I've been equally enriched, if not very much more, in my own experiences, learning different things every time we had a meeting. And that kind of leads me to my second point, which was that you can never be kind of too supportive and thankful of the adults and professionals who come in and give their time for us to learn about things that we wouldn't have an opportunity to learn about otherwise.
And we are also thankful that you guys have spent your time. This is a commitment on all of your all's time. Like, we know you're stepping away from classes or activities. Some of you are traveling very far just to give us your time so that we can learn from you too. So thank you for that. Do I have time for one more? Okay. I saw multiple hands over here. Someone that hasn't got, let me see if there's someone else that I haven't heard. Yeah.
So mine was kind of speak up too, but I just kind of had like a different twist on it. Like, speak like your truth, like, cause like a lot of our schools aren't the same and a lot of them are different, and like don't be afraid to like talk about the harder topics and like say, well, this is what's going good, but this is what's going bad. So like continue to speak your truth.
You said something else that made me think diversity is beautiful. All of your schools aren't different, and that is a beautiful thing. Like, we all have different experiences in different schools, and some of those differences may be challenging, but that gives us an opportunity to step in and make change where it needs to be made. So okay, and then I saw your hand up out of the corner of my eye, and I skipped because I was looking this way. So if you had raised your hand, you wanted to share one of your answers.
Something that I was looking forward to.
Love to hear it.
I think that like looking forward to college, I've had like really great individuals in my life, and even being on this council, it's allowed me to understand that like my voice can really make a difference. And like going off to college, I hope to make a difference wherever I go, but also like when I come back home, I hope to continue making a difference here at home and just growing to understand who I really want to be in the future.
I have no doubt you're going to do that. no doubt you're going to continue to learn how to use your voice and bring it back into the state of Kentucky, hopefully, because as Commissioner Kenny said, we want to hear from you all. We want you to be game changers and makers in this state of Kentucky. Okay, you guys, before we close up, we're going to do a couple deep breaths, and then I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker. So if you want to make sure your feet are on the ground, get your arms nice and relaxed. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, go on and do that. We're going to take a deep breath in. Hold it. Slowly release. Take one more deep breath in. Hold it. And then slowly release. All right, you guys, you are amazing. You're incredible. I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to work with you all, and I look forward to continue to working with you in the future and watching you make the world so much better than what it currently is. Have a great afternoon.
Our Director of Government Relations, who will be sharing a legislative update.
Good morning. You can go to the next slide. We'll jump right in. I don't think we have too long, so we'll jump right in. So the 2024 General Assembly came to a close last Monday when they adjourned sine die. That means they adjourned without a day. So they will not be back in session until January, barring the governor calling them into special session, which right now does not seem likely. So we're going to talk about just a little bit about some of the bills that passed. And because we only have a few minutes, I'm not going to touch on the budget so much because this was a budget year. So every other year, the General Assembly passes a biennial budget for the Commonwealth. So that budget will take effect July 1 and then run for 2 years. And so in 2 years, they'll do another biennial budget. So anyway, that contains a lot of stuff. They can do a lot of things within the budget. And not just funding related, but other things as well. So we could talk about the budget the whole time, but we'll talk about bills instead. So one of the bigger bills that moved this session was House Bill 2. And so if you'll remember from past conversations, the lower the bill number, generally speaking, the higher the priority it is for that chamber in that session. So House Bill 2 is one of the highest priority bills moved by the House this session. And this is a bill that will put a question to voters in November. So it'll be on the ballot, and that's the part on the bottom there. That's the question that will be put towards voters. And what it will do is ask voters if they want public tax dollars to flow to schools outside of the common or public school system. And that's all it asks, right? And so there's a lot of discussion, hours of discussion and debate about this bill as it moved through the process. And a lot of that was, what exactly is the bill going to do? Well, House Bill 2 really just puts the question on the ballot in November. If voters ratify it, so if it's passed by voters in November, the General Assembly will have to come back and decide what exactly does that mean. And so you can look around the country and see examples of things like voucher programs, charter schools, all sorts of options that could be opened up should voters ratify it. If voters don't ratify it, then I think the question will probably be settled for a while because it can't go back on the ballot for a number of years. So we'll see what happens in November. But that's obviously one of the biggest topics of conversation that happened during the session. So any questions about House Bill 2? Sure.
I have a question. I know when, I guess, incoming Commissioner Fletcher was right before he was confirmed, he did take a position in that he didn't support House Bill 2. And I was wondering if that is kind of the overall view of the department, or if that is just a personal matter that he voiced.
So I think he was speaking from his personal standpoint. I think the department will stand with other, we call them K groups, right? So the other educational entities in the state. There is certainly some concern about what it would mean to have public tax dollars flowing to non-public schools. So there'll be a lot of debate and a lot of conversation in the coming months. I think you also heard Dr. Fletcher say that should it get ratified, we will obviously work with the General Assembly to implement best practices and to share with them what we know about these other options that would then be on the table. So we'll see what happens in November and go from there.
What are the implications for?
Go ahead.
What are the implications for public schools? Would money be flowing away from public schools? Would they take a cut to their budget?
It's a great question. And that's one of the questions that we don't know, right? Because that's not addressed with House Bill 2. House Bill 2 only puts the measure on the ballot. And so questions like that are going to have to be answered afterwards if it's ratified, if that makes sense. And so this is why there were hours of debate, right? Because people want to know what could happen. But the answer is we don't know right now because the General Assembly will have to come back if it's ratified and answer questions like that. So will they add a new pot of money for these other schools? Would they take money out of the existing appropriation? I don't know. So it's a good question. And this is why there was a lot of debate on this. But unfortunately, the answers aren't contained within House Bill 2. Go ahead.
So like you said that this is just putting it on the ballot. So what does this mean for like legislators? Like when we sit down and we actually talk about it, are students going to be involved in this conversation, or what is the student involvement on this conversation?
That's another good question, right? So what's going to happen now between now and November? You'll see a lot of advocacy, which obviously students would be free to advocate whichever side of the issue you're in favor of between now and November. Those of you that are 18 and have registered to vote will obviously be able to participate in that election and cast your vote again, whichever way you feel is the way we should go. Now, whether or not students would be involved if it's ratified is another great question. I don't know. I would certainly hope so. But yeah, that's not something we know the answer to yet. But what I would say is that between now and November, if you feel strongly about it, you should certainly advocate in favor of your position.
Thank you.
Oh.
So have there been any polls or like research done on whether or not they feel like whether the constitutional amendment will pass or fail?
I have not heard of any internal polling. I'm sure there is at some level, but I have not seen it. Sure, another one.
Would the money be going towards scholarships for students in particular, or would it fund the schools?
We don't know, right? So these are all questions that will have to be answered if it's ratified. And so this is, again, why there were a lot of questions about the bill as it moved through the process. But those are all things, should it get ratified, that the General Assembly will have to come back and work through. Sorry. All right, I'll take one more, and then we probably should move on since there were a lot of bills.
I know you said that it'll be on like the ballot and stuff like that. So would this include mail-in and other ways of balloting?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
I didn't know.
Yep. All right, so I should have said this at the beginning. So there are about 1,200 bills that were filed this session. A lot of them don't move, right? They kind of die upon filing. But we tagged 251 bills out of the gate to track. Of those, a number of them moved. A lot of them got amended along the way, whether that was a committee sub or a floor amendment. So that's my way of saying we tracked a lot of legislation. To put that in perspective, we had a meeting, a housing-related meeting yesterday, and one of the housing groups in town that works on homeless and housing issues, they noted that they tracked 60 bills this session. So 60 bills, 250. Just kind of gives you an idea of the amount of education-related bills that are filed every year. All right, so moving on, next slide, because I know we only have about 15 minutes. So we'll just hit a couple of highlights here. These are all of the bills that were enacted. So these are all bills that will or have already become law. The ones with asterisks beside them have an emergency clause for all or some of the bill. So those bills went into effect immediately. The rest will go into effect July 15th. That date is 90 days after the session ends. And the Attorney General always puts out an official opinion that sets that date for everybody. So of these bills, I just wanted to point out Senate Bill 2. This is another high priority bill. This is a follow-up to the School Safety and Resiliency Act from, I believe, 2019. You may have heard a lot of talk about this one because there was a lot of discussion around the guardians that are included in this bill. So they're similar to SROs, but somewhat different. So there's a lot of conversation around how that structure will work, particularly around chain of command issues and what happens in the event of an incident. This bill also contains a lot of mental health provisions for students. So that side of the bill we were much more involved with, but some exciting things happening there. There were a lot, you'll see some school bus bills there. There's a couple more that are coming up. Student transportation was a big issue this session, so there were a number of bills around student conduct on school buses, transporting students via passenger vehicles, that sort of thing. Trying to look through the list here. You may be interested in House Bill 142. Vaping has become a very big topic of conversation. So this was an anti-vaping bill trying to reduce vaping in schools. We were happy to see it get amended along the way to give schools more flexibility to not be immediately punitive, right? So to guide students into other options to get treatment or to get off to stop vaping, not just get suspended for vaping. We want to keep students in school as much as possible. So we were happy to see this bill get amended several times along the way to give districts more flexibility in how they address that issue. You'll also see an AED bill there in House Bill 22. There were two big AED bills. So this bill removes the medical oversight requirement, which is not real exciting. The other bill requires an AED in every school building and at every athletic event in practice. So that's pretty neat, right? So again, it's kind of a student safety bill. And I'm sorry, I'm going fast on these because we've got so little time. Are there any questions about any of these? Anything you all want to? Sure.
The cursive writing one.
Yeah, this is one of the more unusual. I did not see this one coming. I'm not. I would not have made that bet prior to the session. But yeah, so it's a cursive writing bill. This is a bill. This is kind of an example of a bill that is doing something that really schools already have the ability to do. So cursive writing is already in the standards. So I'm not exactly sure that this is going to change a whole lot. But yeah, cursive writing. So yeah, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I never crossed my mind that she would learn to write in cursive. I just hadn't thought about it in a long time. I actually had to look up how to write in cursive some letters. I couldn't remember. Anyway, next slide. Let's move along. All right, so House Bill 162 is one of the ones we were very happy to see get across the finish line. If you remember, for those of you that remember last session, we got something called the Read to Succeed Act done that addressed early literacy initiatives in the state. And this bill is a follow-up to that in that it is working on early math education. So it does a couple of different things. It sets up a professional development plan for teachers to get them professional development around early math education, and then provides funding to schools down the road. And we got a relatively large appropriation of $5 million in each year of the biennium. So very excited to see it get across the finish line in its first year. That's unusual. It took Read to Succeed, I don't even know how many sessions, I think more than 4 to get across the finish line. So really excited to see this one get done in its first session and to pick up a very sizable appropriation. So we're very excited about that one. 169 is that AED bill I mentioned. House Bill 300 is one that you may have heard folks talk about. It's trying to speed up the process for when a complaint is made against a teacher or staff member. This bill may be problematic as we try to implement this. Some of the timelines are outside of our control here at the department and at the EPSB. We'll see how it plays out. Hopefully it doesn't result in the dismissal of any serious allegations, but it's one that we may have to circle back to at some point to try to amend to make some changes. The related bill that didn't get across the finish line was House Bill 275, and that was the teacher misconduct bill. So this was its second session. Last session it got filed and made it out of the House, but couldn't get through the Senate. This time it got through both the House and the Senate and still didn't become law through a kind of a quirk of the way things work. So what happened was it passed the House, it went over to the Senate and passed out, but it got amended in the Senate. So then it had to go back to the House for the House to concur or not concur with the changes the Senate made, and it just ran out of time. So we'll see if that one comes back next session, but it's an interesting example of a bill that managed to clear both chambers and still didn't make it to the governor for action. House Bill 377 is a really interesting one because it does a number of things for teacher workforce recruitment and retention. Get them all mixed up here. So one, it creates a paid student teaching pilot. This is something we're very excited about. It's something we've talked about for the better part of a year now. So it'll provide $5,000, up to $5,000 in the semester that a person does their student teaching. So very excited about that. It also creates a student loan forgiveness program for teachers. So that's a really interesting pilot project as well. That one got a significant amount of funding attached to it. And then I don't think it's included in 377, but it's in the budget, so I'll mention it because it's related. They doubled the amount of money for the existing teacher scholarship. So we've had a teacher scholarship that's been funded at $1 million a year for a long time, and that's now gone to $2 million a year. So very excited to see those workforce initiatives get done. I've been here 2.5 years, and teacher workforce issues have been kind of at the heart of things that we've talked about with the General Assembly. So very excited to see those things get done. 446 and 447 are those student transportation bills. And then 471 is another example of something we're already doing, but it's getting codified. It's getting put into law. In this case, it's related to pre-enrollment of military students of military families. We're already doing this, but the Department of Defense wants to see it codified for reasons we don't know. But anyway, there we go. So I think I got one more slide.
I've got a question.
Oh, sure. I hopped in.
So my school had 2 student teachers in it this year.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, so each student teacher would get $5,000, up to $5,000.
Yeah, there's still some caveats.
Who's paying that? Is it the state or is it the school?
Well, the state. I mean, it's appropriated by the state.
Okay.
So it's state funds. So it'll all run through KIA. KIA is the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. So they run all of the scholarship programs, keys, all that sort of. I don't know if Pell Grants run through them or not, but things like that are all done through KIA. And so KIA will administer those programs, but because they're related to what we do here at the Department of Education, and we're very excited about them, we are mentioning them as we go through all of this stuff. Any other questions about these bills? I apologize. We're condensing a 60-day session into a very short update here, but we'll keep rolling. House Bill 535 is civics education. This is a big topic of conversation in the last year or so. So this bill will give districts 2 options. Right now, there's a civics test that's given. They can continue to do that with a slightly higher threshold, or they can create a half-credit course for civics literacy. So I have no idea which way districts are going to lean on this one, but we'll see what the conversation is now that it's in place, and we'll move forward. 695 is an interesting one. It's an adaptive kindergarten readiness project. So again, early childhood education, critically important. I think people are really starting to realize that and looking at that grade 3 benchmark of reading as a real predictor of future success. So a lot of talk about how to get students on track early and get that benchmark. And this is an online program. So it's offered through the internet and for families and children. We'll do a pilot project for about 400 students, and the department's going to pay for the first year of this with some existing ESSER dollars that we have available. There's no funding for a second year right now, but we'll see if some maybe gets appropriated next session. 611 was trying to address truancy. Chronic absenteeism and truancy are, again, have become very big topics of conversation nationwide since the pandemic. We've seen those numbers go up dramatically across the country, so not surprised to see a bill addressing that. A couple of other ones here. Oh, 499, let's talk about that one real quick, and that might be the last one I mentioned. So House Bill 499 is one we worked on for about a year. So our Office of Career and Technical Education started about a little more than a year ago, but really started to focus in a year ago on getting a distribution formula set up for the monies that the General Assembly appropriates for career and technical education. So in the last budget, they significantly increased the amount of funding that was available. And so that allowed for the first time for the department to fund CTE equally across locations. So in the past, you've had a welding student funded at one level at an area technology center, a different level at a locally operated center, and maybe not at all at a high school program. And so that's gone away. And so it's now we're equally funding everyone. And so they really wanted to come up with a way to codify a new formula. And so that's what 499 will do. It also adds in some measures of high quality CTE as part of the funding formula. So schools that or centers that are doing a better job of meeting those metrics will essentially get more funding. So a little bit like performance-based funding, but not quite. So, but moving in that direction. So very excited to see that one get done. Any questions on these? Sure.
What does it mean, the audit of the KE?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this is not what I mentioned, but so do you all know what an audit is? Let's start there. Okay, I see most heads nodding. Okay, So we get audited a lot as a department for various things, right? So different offices, programmatically, financially. This is more of a kind of a comprehensive review of the department. I think the intent is to help give the new commissioner some ideas on what's working well, what's maybe not working so well, as he comes into the role and thinks about where to take the department over the next number of years. So I think that was the intent. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
just
sure.
for curiosity's sake, how did you determine like the 400 students that were chosen?
Oh, good question. So how do we get to a 400 student pilot? So we worked backwards. So the potential vendor gave us some data on what it costs per student to do both a summer program and a year-round program. And so then we looked and said, well, we have approximately this much ESSER money that we could put toward this project. So how many students could we fund over the course of a year-long pilot? So kind of worked our way backwards into that one. But it's a good question. So, sure.
I had a question. So what is the connection, which I'm completely fine with these, but what's the connection between public schools and medical cannabis? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so 829 moved late in the session, and so we haven't had a ton of conversation about this, but it got an amendment. Again, almost every bill that passed this session got at least one committee substitute or floor amendment. A lot of them got multiples of each. And so one of the ones that 829 picked up will require local boards of education to develop policies related to this.
And so that would be adopting those local policies as to whether they will administer medical cannabis on your campuses for students that are eligible to use medical cannabis.
See, I didn't know if it was for students' use, like a medical reason, or if it's like if teachers take it, if they have like a certain testing.
I don't know about the
protocol,
teacher.
what that is.
Well, again, this one moved real late in the session, so we haven't had a lot of conversations about this. But so I'm not sure if it applies to just students or if it'll be both students, faculty, staff.
Sorry to backtrack.
No, have at it.
The vaping bill,
Yep.
it's been like a huge problem in my school.
Mhm.
And I personally think it's like really sad that people even bring them to school and like do it in the first place. Like it's just like really, really sad. Have y'all thought, like, how far have y'all gone with that? And like, have y'all thought of like disciplinary action or anything? Because
So House Bill 142 sets up a lot of that. And really kind of, initially it was very, again, I mean, punitive maybe not be the right word, but it would have required schools to like suspend students on, the second or third offense. So it got amended along the way to add in more education components. So if someone's caught vaping, they can now be sort of pushed into a program to help them stop, or other alternatives as opposed to just suspension and things like that. So that's what House Bill 142 does. And so the department will start to put out guidance on all these bills that pass in the next month or two. And so that'll be some of the guidance that we offer is, what will some of those diversion programs look like? Or what are those options? Things like that. So
It's a really good question, and it's going to feed right into our next topic on the agenda, which is discussion on substance use and vaping.
There you
So
go.
teed up very nicely for that next
Well,
discussion.
thank you all. Good questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your good questions. Thanks to Brian. He's done a great job helping us navigate through the General Assembly. It's always a very, very busy time for public education. As you can tell by the volume of bills, legislators are very interested in what's happening in our public schools. So thank you, Brian.
Queuing up. Dr. Vandehar, Dr. Chang, and Jessica Napier.
Hi, everyone. My name is Florence Chang. I think I met you all kind of virtually in the last one with chronic absenteeism, so it's great to see you all in person. Today, we're going to be talking about a very hot topic right now happening in our schools, substance use and vaping in schools. So we just want to first introduce ourselves. I'll just plug really quick what Commissioner Kinney said at the beginning about coming back to your community. I love that you all talked about your goals, and I just wanted to tell you that I left school, I left Kentucky, I grew up in Kentucky, but I did leave for school. I did move to the United Kingdom even, so I would love to talk to you about that. Lived there for 3 years, loved it, but there's so much reward to coming back and giving to your state. So I just wanted to plug that. My kids actually go to school where Jack Harlow graduated, and you've seen how big he became. I still watch him come back to the community, give financials, donations, give his visibility, visit, encourage kids. So even if you don't live in Kentucky, there are still ways you can give back to Kentucky. So I just wanted to plug that before we keep going. Okay, so then let me pass it on to Judy to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Judy. I work in what's called the Division of Student Success. So we do a lot of different things around trauma, mental health, lots of different areas, dropout prevention. So excited to be here with you all. And I was equally very moved just listening to the big hearts and minds that are here.
I'm Jessica Napier. I work alongside Judy and Florence in the Division of Student Success. My area is bully prevention, suicide prevention, drug prevention. So I am glad to be back here. Before coming to KDE, I worked in Scott County Schools for 17 years. Primary was my area, but school counseling, I was there in a counselor for 7 years. So anytime that I can come back and work with students, it's my all-time passion. So I am so glad to be here with you guys today. Before we get started, I just want to begin by reminding you that we are going to talk about illegal substance use today. So we're going to start with data, but we are going to stop throughout and ask for your feedback and discussion. It's going to be very informal, and we really want to hear what you all have to say about this topic. But we want to hear what you have to say. Just keep in mind not to mention any names or tell personal stories as we go through this, because it is a topic about illegal substance use. So we're going to get started. I just wanted to remind you of that as we begin this today.
All right, we are really looking forward to hearing your all's perspectives, because you saw and heard Brian Perry talk about the legislation. So the adults are definitely in this conversation, but knowing that you all come from such diverse backgrounds, especially many of you are looking into the medical field, really interested to hear what you all think about this topic. So the very first slide here shows Infinite Campus data. So remember, anytime there's a behavior infraction in school, it gets recorded into our student information system. These are the events that are related to drug, alcohol, and tobacco events in Kentucky schools. The blue bar shows data from 2017-18, so about 5 years ago, compared to the most recent data set we had was from last year, so 2022-23. And then across the bottom, you'll see elementary, middle, and high, and then the percent increase. So I just want you to take a second, and if someone can raise their hand or someone online, tell me, what is one thing you notice about the chart? Yes.
The increase in incidents in elementary schools, to me, at almost 500% is quite high.
Very high. Yes, very striking. Anything else? Yes.
I think the increase in middle school students using illegal substances is quite shocking. I wonder where that increase came from.
Yes. Great question. Yes.
I was going to comment that all this data come from Infinity Campus, but I know from experience that I've seen, many teachers do not they see students vaping and they don't really do anything about it. So I'm sure the data is even higher. It's just surprising how high it is.
That's a very good point. So what she said, if you couldn't hear, was that sometimes incidents are happening, and you heard I have 2 teenagers. I hear about it in the bathrooms, in the hallways, at school-sponsored events. Sometimes those infractions are not recorded in Infinite Campus. because they are doing some other things first before they send them to like a suspension or an in-school detention room. So it could be that these are very likely going to be underreported. So that was a very good observation. So those are great takeaways. Those were exactly what we noticed. Was number one, there's an increase at every level. Number two, the biggest increases are with the younger students. So it tells us, like, forecasting ahead what we need to be thinking about as we develop the guidance that goes around this. Parallel with this, it would be irresponsible to not also mention that correlated and associated with the increase in substance abuse and vaping incidents, there's also been this increase in psychological distress. So Kentucky collects from students, you all probably have taken this, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th, responses around behavior and mental health. And you'll see over this period of time in this chart, this comes from the Kentucky Incentives for Prevention, KIP, the KIPP survey. There's been a parallel increase in psychological distress and mental health challenges such as suicidal ideation. 6th graders being the biggest group that's increased. So the youngest that they collect, that's where we see the biggest increase. And they also were able to associate the data in the survey. And so what they reported was that those students who experienced and reported, I'm having psychological distress, they're 2.5 times more likely to vape, they're 2.5 times more likely to use cannabis, they're more likely to drink, and they're more likely to use cigarettes. So there is an association between those two, and we just wanted to make sure you all saw that data. Okay, so we're going to pause here for some feedback.
All right, so when we look at this, the first question I want you to think about, so what are your thoughts about the causes of vaping and substance use? All kinds of feedback on this, yeah. So let's start with you first, Peter.
I think, honestly, you hit the nail on the head with the psychological distress. If I had to define one main reason for why I see many people vaping or using illegal substances, is just because of the situation that they're in, whether that's family, school, and the way they feel about themselves and their ability to do things. Now, I think it is shockingly clear how, vaping is used as a way to handle that in an unhealthy way.
Coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
What I see often is that one student will experience that psychological distress and they will begin using, and then their friends, that student will normalize it around them and pressure them into using as well, and suddenly there are more and more students around them using.
I think another big thing that plays into it is just like we're seeing increasing use of just like social media and internet, and even younger. I think it's really shocking to see those 6th graders, those 7th, 8th graders, and just the rise that we're seeing in illegal substance use. And I think social media definitely plays a role in that.
Okay, good point. Yeah.
I like to think I'm a very honest person. My name actually means honest in French, but I really don't like to sugarcoat things, and yes, we can say that it's psychological issues, but I think it's just people being immature and thinking that they're cool. There's no reason, there could be some excuses for what you're going through at home, but there's no reason you should be in 6th grade doing these things. It's honestly just absurd is what it is. And so yeah, we can be oh, they're going through a lot, but at the end of the day, they know better. So I don't know what we could do to so I think instead of trying to be yeah, they're going through stuff, we should just how can we stop them from doing that?
Sophia?
Kind of going off that too, I know I've noticed at my school, most people go to the bathrooms to vape. Every time I walk in, there's probably someone vaping in there. And I think a large part of how vaping spreads is just people want to fit in. I've noticed that whenever I walk into the bathroom and there are people vaping in there, it's suddenly a very tense environment. I'm kind of an outsider, or I'm someone who's going to snitch on them. But if they're around people who are doing this bad practice with them, they feel more comfortable and more accepting. So that's probably a large motivating factor.
These are good points. Ava?
I feel like too, it's also a learned trait. We see a lot of adults in our lives, which for them, a lot of these substances are legal for their age, but still they've had a rough day at work. So they're going to have a glass of wine or they smoke cigarettes because of stress. So then whenever these students are feeling unsupported in their stress, they see what their unsupported adults in their lives are doing and they think, even though I'm underage, maybe that could help me.
Well, I don't know if you guys had this sort of conference last year, but we had a conference last year at my school when they talk about that sometimes people use illegal substances not because they have mental problems, but sometimes those illegal substances are the one that causes those mental problems. So it was actually, there is data that shows that in many, many cases, it is quite the opposite. Many people think that to get to the point where you're using cigarettes or you're smoking, you have to before experience trauma or feel bad or have depression, but it's quite the opposite. In many of the cases, you develop those issues because of those substances. So I will go to the point that they're trying to fit in and like feel comfortable around people. And I also see that point that whenever I get into the bathrooms, they once I told me I was going to snitch on them, or if I was going to talk about them. So I don't think yes, mental health is a great point, and it's the causes of many students, but the majority, it's because they're trying to like go with the society. And also my school, Franklin High School, is really, really big, and we have so many immigrants coming in. I'm an immigrant myself, and I noticed that many of them are trying to do it. For example, in Cuba, where I'm from, we don't really have those like tobacco and vaping just because we don't really have how to get them, like our teenagers. But whenever they get here, they're like, oh my God, we have all of these like resources and like way of getting those stuff. And it's just so easy to get that, for example, I know some stores that you can get in and they probably give you stuff even if you're not 18. So it was just like heads up about that.
Yeah.
Again, with the accessibility of it, I know people that have parents that buy it for them, and I know people that know the specific places where you can go in and they don't ID you, and their siblings who are maybe older buy it for them. So I think that just how easy it is to get these addictive things is just kind of crazy, and I think that needs to be fixed too.
Okay, we'll take one more. Yeah.
I also think it's kind of like an accountability thing. I know in a lot of different countries, like in like Europe and stuff like that, like when I went to visit France, like when you're there, like drinking age is a lot lower, and they're a lot like, they just don't see it as something like super duper cool. Like everybody drinks, like not everybody drinks, like, but like it's like a part of the meal. It's just a normalized event. It's like us having ice cream or something. It's part of the meal. I think when you separate that and you make it something super big, it tends to look like a lot of people want to be cool and they really want to do that. And I do think that mental health has an effect on it, and the environment you grew up on, and the way that people around you cope with certain things can always have an effect on that. And I just think that shifting that image, shifting that viewpoint, that after a hard day of work, I really do need a cup of wine, and understanding that maybe there's a different way to handle that stress is really how we can solve the root of the problem.
I don't think this is working. For some reason it stopped working, so. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your life experience about this. Definitely on target with what we also encountered. So now as far as solutions, it is a complex problem. You know, you all brought up a lot of the issues. You know, one thing you talked about access is the role of big industry, the tobacco. You know, the tobacco industry lost a lot of money on, because the campaigns around not smoking cigarettes was pretty effective, and so they lost a lot of money, and so now it's, you know, now put into vaping. And so when you go to the gas stations, what do you see? when you go to the counter. Like, they're everywhere, all, colored, like, very much targeting young people. So there's definitely that role. But it is a complex set of factors, as you all talked about. And what I wanted to point to is we wanted to give you the handout just so you could take it with you. So what I'm going to talk about are kind of the 3 buckets of what we are thinking that would be helpful in addressing this issue as far as schools are concerned. And one of the first things on your paper on the back side, they are a list of campaigns. So these buckets go into prevention. It's basically prevention and education about the health effects, about, this topic in general, like what are we doing to prevent and educate kids before they encounter a peer who's pressuring them. And then support, how can we respond in a supportive way that will help address the problem, like the root cause, instead of just punish. And then maybe all of those feed into like, how can we address it using policy? So I don't want to read each one, because really what we want to hear from you is what solution, because I guarantee you have more creative solutions than what we're proposing. But just wanted to show you there are some student created campaigns if you're interested to like share with your school, or I don't know, by just a show of hands, how many of you all have seen posters or things around your school about vapes and the danger? Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So yeah, those are some campaigns. But if we can go to the next slide, and these are gonna, again, it's a lot of text, so you all have these items here, and there are links to it, so I assume they'll have access to the PowerPoint, so you can connect on these. But I don't know if you're aware that there are regional prevention specialists, and they also have, so they can come in and do prevention education, and there's also community mental health centers. But they also have a few in each region of actually addiction support people that come, their whole job is to go into schools and help. Because unfortunately, and you see how early it's starting, addiction is a collective disease in our society. Like you said, we see it everywhere, not just with the phone addiction, but alcohol. Like, it is just a collective disease that we need to deal with. And our schooling and our institution is a great place to start through education. So if you can click on the next one, sorry about this is not working. Also, supportive spaces, like you all have heard of the 12-step program. So those things are very, very effective because it's people struggling with the same issues in a supportive space. And that's why it's so effective in keeping people sober. And when people mess up, kind of helping to get them back on track. And so how can we create more of those peer group spaces in schools to kind of address these? You can just, if you don't mind, just going ahead to these. I think there's one more, one or two. Yeah, thank you so much. Also, how many of you, I'm curious throughout this year, have you ever looked at your school's climate data? That's all public report card? Okay, awesome. We're just encouraging that, as mentioned on the front part of your handout, the relationship between the importance of a positive and healthy climate in schools, which is created by adults, create the weather, and that, so it starts there, but we all play a role. And so, but first we can look at which areas do we really need to work on, because we have that data and it's really rich. There's also, as Florence mentioned, the behavior data. Schools have access to tools, data visualizations and charts to look at where are these incidences happening, what grade levels, what kind of things do we need, where can we target, looking at the data. And as someone mentioned wisely, it's conservative. Like, a lot of these cases are not reported in some way because it's so much of it's happening, and the data would look even worse. Like, they'll be spending all day putting in the referrals because there's so much of this happening. And then, again, education. So curricula, some really great curricula that has been developed, not just about vaping, but also specifically about cannabis which absolutely contributes to mental health problems. While some people use it as a coping, it's also contributing. And in fact, they're seeing a lot more cannabis-induced psychosis in hospitals among a lot of young people. So it is very serious. And I think people don't recognize how serious it is. And then the next slide is around, okay, how can we support students who are caught, and where that House bill goes really, is doing really well to provide schools or guide schools to a graduated response, you know, and information about how to address the problem, not just send them off. So if you don't mind just pushing through, I gonna stop because you all have these points. Student voice, obviously, that's really important. And there's a lot of great resources that have been developed, but we need to constantly working on the education piece and then supporting recovery. And then the last one is basically, the last section is just policy. And House Bill 142 has helped us a lot. So we're excited. Actually, this was all developed before that got passed. So it's great to see something aligned with what we know is good practice. So basically the policies are really to, implement what we know is good practice. So now I'd love to hear from you all on the next slide.
Yeah, so what do you think can be done in districts and schools to address this problem, and what do you think about the approaches that was just proposed?
Now, I do want to say that sometimes whenever you have the school districts that will have like a seminar or like a huge assembly and then everyone comes over and y'all talk about how vaping is bad, that can tend to backfire, because then you see in the week after those assemblies happen, you have a stark increase in discipline events regarding the very thing that was just discussed the week before.
Yes.
So sometimes that's probably not the best approach when it comes to things like that.
Absolutely.
I was going to say real quick to that point, the DARE program, I don't know if you all have heard of DARE, but that's used as an example of when they did the evaluation of that program, that program actually had the opposite effect of getting kids more curious about drugs and not preventing the use. So that's always held up as an example of why evaluation of programming is important. And 1,000%, I just want to say you're definitely on target with that. And that's why what we're talking, about the importance of doing like evidence-based curricula, like in smaller groups and classes, and it's, those can feel good to get one and done, like a big assembly, but I really appreciate you pointing that out.
And that peer group, like Judy was talking about earlier, is really effective too in that. So yeah.
So I don't want to be like disrespectful or anything at all, but sometimes I've seen situations where where is SRO involvement, and how much involvement do you want SROs to have? Because sometimes, prevention and education, that is all fine, great, beautiful, it works. But then I've also seen situations where when you get caught by the police and you're actually facing real life consequences, it'll make you stop. You feel like, oh, I'm not going to get caught. I'm not going to get caught. There's no consequences to this. But then you do get caught in the schools, in the bathrooms, and you actually have to sit down with either a police officer or the court system. And to me, that would make me, be like, nope, not going through this again. So where's the line is kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that kind of goes back to we want to make sure our SROs are trauma informed, and they've had that training too. And that's up for discussion for sure. We want your feedback on that too. So yeah.
So I know we were talking about a lot of restorative practices, what to do after someone's caught, but I also think it starts from before, because as you all mentioned, a lot of students start vaping because they don't have support systems, and it's a lot easier to go get a vape than to go into your counselor's office and talk with them. So I think a big thing is just increasing support for all students and making it readily accessible. So if students are dealing with problems, they're not as scared, and it's going to be a lot easier in access to reach a counselor rather than them getting a vape.
I feel like similar to what Rima said, there's a lot of fear associated with substance abuse, fear that once you stop, you'll once again go back to feeling bad again. But there's also the fear that you're already too deep in and you can't report it, you can't report your friends, you feel like you're backed into a corner and the only way left to go is down. So I feel like encouraging students to realize that there is a way forward that does not have to result in substance abuse.
Kind of going back to what Justin had said earlier, I'm not sure if other districts implement this, but all of our freshmen in our district are required to take a truth and consequences course, which basically they take us to the courthouse. They go through different kind of situations. So there's drug abuse, there's vaping in your school, there's like different other kinds of abuse like emotional abuse and things like that. So they take us through what a legal proceeding would look like, what charges you may face, like if you were to be caught multiple times in your school. We meet police officers, we meet actual people who are in jail for drugs, and they are there to tell us we have gotten clean and we know whenever we are released, we will not go back because of the consequences we've faced. So we meet with lawyers and different things like that. Obviously, there is still a problem in my county with that, but I definitely see like majority of the problem being in middle school. And once they go through truth and consequences, it kind of subsides and goes away as they venture into high school.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think back to like the whole like accountability, like upfront thing. I feel like nowadays, like the biggest mistake that like the education system is doing is like, and I feel like this is gonna sound really bad when I say it out loud, but like, I honestly like, this is gonna sound bad. I don't care if like what you're doing something wrong because like you're going through something, because at the end of the day you're doing something wrong. So I feel like there needs to be disciplinary action. Just like how like whenever you cheat, like at my school, cheating is like a big thing. If you get caught cheating, you get a 0 no matter what. Like, why don't we ask? I feel like because like when people cheat, you don't ask them what's going on at home. So like why like when somebody vapes, you ask them, like you sugarcoat it. You're like, oh my goodness, like are you okay? Like what like mental health things are you going through? And I guess it's just like maybe like my culture and something, but like we're very like upfront. Like if you did something wrong, you did something wrong, and like you need to like have disciplinary actions for that. And so I was gonna ask the man, but like have y'all considered I wouldn't say like metal detectors, but like finding like what material vapes are made out of, and then like having a system like when you walk through the door, like it would catch it, like scan it, and then like that way people genuinely cannot bring it inside of the school or like inside of the bathroom, like have it along the bathroom doors or along the school entrance walls, like something that would genuinely stop it from coming in the school.
I think the problem with that is that there's so many different devices of vapes that I just don't think it can be stopped at this point. You have so many different types made of so many different things, and it's always evolving into so many different, you have them in strings, you have them in pins, you have them in, all the different ways that I wish we could. But I see your point. Sophia, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was
No,
yawning.
sorry, I
but,
caught you in a yawn.
I know at my school we have a lot of like preventative measures. Like we have metal detectors to try and catch vapes, which have not really worked that well. And then we had so many people vaping in the bathrooms at our school that they closed all of the bathrooms except one, the furthest one from any of the classrooms, so that teachers can monitor it. And I guess that kind of has helped the vaping subside. But I feel like when we're focusing on ways to prevent vaping, first of all, we need to focus on things that aren't just going to stop kids from vaping at school specifically.
Right.
Stop them vaping like at all is the goal. And secondly, we need to focus on measures that aren't going to punish the rest of the student body for the actions of like a loud minority. Because like I have to spend 10 minutes whenever I go to the bathroom like missing class because like I don't know, a couple people wanted to vape in the restrooms and that got it closed for all of us.
We need to focus our efforts on preventative instead of intervention type measures. Okay, yeah.
Going off what Sophia said, in our school they installed last year vape detectors in all the bathrooms, and I think they go off so often, like even when no one's in the bathroom, like they'll just go off randomly. And I think one time some kid genuinely just closed the door and the thing went off. So they don't work, and so I don't think these detection methods, they aren't powerful enough yet to be effective. So I think, going off what Sophia said, I think preventative measures are the only way as of right now, because these technologies, they aren't as advanced as they need to be effective.
Sure. Okay. Good point. Yeah.
I think to me, there's kind of some parallels between all of these approaches and our general approach to addiction and anything. And I'm kind of curious, I was going to suggest a approach that is a little bit more, say, public health almost related, in terms of when someone is using a vape for whatever reason, disregarding the reason that they began, at the very beginning at least. There's been so much research about addiction. Kentucky and the opiate crisis was severely affected, and the issue of an addiction. A student is addicted to nicotine or to a substance. That, to me, thinking of it like that instead of thinking of it as a behavioral problem, addiction encompasses, at least in my mind, the behavioral problems, the mental health issues that might come from or may have led to the addiction, and approaching it like a public health problem with interventions that are, could be, a medical, intervention in terms of helping someone get off of a drug. Seems like a way that we can combine the idea of how do we not punish all the students, how do we acknowledge that you're not forced to vape, but also create a solution that takes all of it into account.
Yeah.
I want to hit on what he said and what she said. I think we can only put so much into prevention. I think we should go at it with like the public health thing, because if you talk to most people who do vape, it's like an addiction thing. We're kids, we don't know what to really do with addiction. So when you first turn to like punishment, it becomes even more of a problem to where we feel alone. So if we really work on like addiction and helping like us, like people who do vape quit, like it's gonna help a lot more.
And I think that's a good point with this new bill that is in place. I think the efforts are towards when students get caught with a vape, there is that cessation class or course that they have to go through instead of immediately going into out of school suspension or going into in-school suspension. That is part of that we're seeing that we're rallying behind, which is a good thing, because in so many cases what we're seeing across the Commonwealth is that they're going into these out-of-school suspensions or going to different placements without any type of course or education behind what we may consider addiction, and then they're just going back into that cycle, right? So we need some sort of course or education behind why, it doesn't matter if it's, for attention or peer pressure or whatever. They need some sort of education to maybe hopefully get them out of that cycle or addiction that they fell into in the first place. Yeah.
I think a big thing too is just looking at all these numbers. Yes, like the preventative measures, like they might help, but not everyone is going to quit. So I think it's also important to put in measures that are like kind of pushing them in the way to do it safely if they're going to do it anyway, because not 18,000 high schoolers are not going to stop vaping just because you say vaping is bad, and these numbers keep increasing. And I think the way that I think of it is there are like medical programs for like people who like use needles for like heroin and stuff. There's a lot of hospitals that will give out clean needles, even though necessarily that's like helping the problem, but at least those people are not using used needles where they can get sicker from it and die immediately. Whereas like they have those resources to kind of get clean ones if they need it. So as bad as vaping is and how we do want to prevent it, I think it's also like showing students, all right, well, if you're going to get into this, like we want to make sure that you do it as safely as possible where you're not harming yourself and others. So I think it's just those measures that like that's what's used in healthcare, and I think schools are just as important to use that in.
I'd say maybe one or two more comments, and if there are more comments or suggestions from the group, what would you recommend is the best way for them to share that with you all?
Email, okay, email would be great.
I'll happy to
Yes.
pass that along.
All right, thank you. All right, tomorrow, yeah, Ava.
I think too that it goes without saying that teachers really care about their students, and the measures that are in place currently, at least from what I've seen in my district, they're very strict. They're very zero tolerance. So especially for like seniors and juniors who are trying to enter that next step, teachers are less likely to report it when they see it, and they just act like they didn't see it because they understand where that student comes from and that this action on their record, this proof of substance abuse, could hurt them in their future and their university, their scholarship, or however that works. So I think if teachers, with this new bill and all the things, I think if teachers learn that these students will be educated on why not to vape and it won't be as harsh and it could help them in their life, you will probably see in the next few years an increase of vaping. But I think that number will have always been there. It'll just be an increase in reporting because teachers will feel like those students are now being supported in their substance abuse.
Absolutely, good point. All right, let's take one more. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say he had his hand up.
Okay, yeah.
Bouncing around a little bit, kind of what Hannah mentioned earlier about like how do you like detect these things or how do you get them out of schools? And I know you went to Floyd County a while back. Floyd County, at least Prestonsburg, a teacher of mine used to teach at Prestonsburg, and their whole county system gave out school-issued backpacks. So then they could always just say, hey, I'm gonna look through your backpack. You know, it's not just like it's private and then you have to go through all those avenues, which is, you know, that's a whole other problematic situation. But that is an option. And I know when we talked about absenteeism, we talked about, you know, student-led initiatives, which help a lot because if it's an authority figure, most of the time they're just going to graze it off or they won't even talk to them because, you know, they don't want to deal with those people. I know that, you know, friends of mine that are in nursing classes, you know, in the medical thing, they may listen to them, you know, because they already have to have, if they're doing clinicals or working in, you know, just a regular just test setting, they have to know those preventative measures. So maybe that's something where you involve the students that have that training to do like a peer support program because they know it, they're friends with them, but they also have the background to handle it as well. So it's just a thought.
Well, we thank you guys for your feedback today, your discussion. As always, it's, you know, students come up with the best ideas and it gets the point across way better than adults. So we really appreciate your feedback on this hot topic today. So thank you guys so much.
Welcome back to our meeting. As you noted, we have a very busy agenda and we're very excited for your input and conversation. At this portion of our meeting, we look forward to hearing from several of our members of the Commissioner Student Advisory Council for their presentation of the Council's Student Voice Project. I will turn it over to our chair, Rima Dutt.
Hi everyone, my name is Rima Dutt. I'm a senior at DuPont Manual High School, and this is my second year on the council.
My name is Peter Jefferson. I'm a junior at Henry Clay High School in Fayette County, and this is my second year on the council.
Hello, I'm Sophia Langford. I'm a sophomore at J. Graham Brown School, and this is my first year on the council.
Hello, I'm Ava Benson. I am a senior at Henderson County High School, and this is my first year on the council.
Hi everyone, my name is Salia Teanes Medina. I'm a sophomore at Franklin High School, and this is my first year in the council as well.
Hi everybody, my name is India Young. I'm a dual enrolled junior at both the Craft Academy for Excellence in Science and Mathematics, as well as Marion County High School, and this is my first year on the council.
I just want to start by thanking everyone who came to support us. Today, we're going to be presenting our council project that we've been working on for the past year, and it's called A Focus on Student Voice, the Student, Teacher, and Administrator Perspective. And to start things off, I'm going to pass it off to Peter.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone again for being here. Today, the Student Advisory Council and all of us as a whole, in cooperation with our adult partners and numerous generous stakeholders who spent time interviewing with us, giving us their feedback to help build this report, would like to present our report on student voice in Kentucky. I'd like to start off with a definition of student voice. Student voice is a complex topic and a key part of our educational experience. Early on in our council activities this year, we used everyone's voices together to define student voice. Our council defines student voice as the sum of all student perspectives on any education-related topics, ranging from in-classroom assignments to mental health supports to interactions at the administrative level between students and teachers. Our definition of student voice also includes the merit given to student perspectives and the meaningful dialogue between students and stakeholders to improve education. Student voice is important at every level, from students to teachers to administrators. Everyone is part of this conversation. Now that I've shared the base definition for our project, we'd like to consider the importance of student voice in education.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to discuss with you why the council decided to focus on student voice. Student voice being a diverse topic, the council saw varying justifications for making it the focus of our council project. For one, student voice, according to the National Library of Medicine, allows students to build a more positive relationship with their teachers. Other benefits, as seen by the Quaglia Institute, Benner and Kahn, to integrating student voice include increased student motivation, attendance, and academic performance. The council sees student voice as an essential platform for advocacy in the way of showcasing the differing needs of students from various socioeconomic backgrounds. Now I'd like to give the floor to Council President Rima Dunn.
Thank you, Sophia. So for those who aren't familiar with the Commissioner Student Advisory Council, we kind of just want to take a minute to explain it. So we are an advisory body to the Commissioner of Education, and it's designed of 35 public school students from across the state in grades 10, 11, and 12. And the council meets monthly to really include the stakeholders in the conversation, which are students, the ones actively experiencing Kentucky schools and their effects. And we meet monthly with the commissioner to make sure student voice is inputted on critical issues in Kentucky education. And we work in unison with the Kentucky Department of Education to really transform public education with an optimistic outlook. So during our May 30th meeting of 2023, our council introduced this idea of student voice, and we opened up the floor to all of our members to express their thoughts on it. And what we saw was that there was an overwhelming amount of just this express support for exploring this idea even more in every single one of our schools coming from different regions of Kentucky and different backgrounds. And what we saw is that we all wanted more student voice. So over the past year, our council has been working on this idea of student voice, and we decided to conduct interviews with different stakeholders, not only including students on the advisory council, but also well beyond. So during our January 23rd meeting of 2024, we interviewed a district superintendent, an assistant director at a residential high school, a middle school teacher, and an elementary school counselor. And we recognize that these 4 interviews aren't representative of the entire Kentucky stakeholder population. However, we believe that these 4 interviews are a great insight to start this conversation on student voice. And to share some of the findings, I'll pass it off to Ava.
Thank you, Irma. So the first question that we posed to our stakeholders in these interviews was, what is your definition of student voice? Each stakeholder had their own definition of what student voice was to them and what they saw in their districts, but some particular quotes that we highlighted. The middle school teacher that we interviewed said that student voice is particular, individualized, transparent, honest, analytical, and adaptive when paired with action. The district superintendent also spoke to how vital student voices are and how they felt if discussions with students are not happening in education, they feel that is a mistake. So then we posed a second question. We asked, why is student voice important in education? Student voice is very important because the policies, procedures schools put in place have got to have a voice in them, said the assistant director of a residential high school. They continued by stating that it is difficult to know how to help students when you are not hearing or listening to what they are saying. The district superintendent further stressed the importance of student voice by stating that education is a service industry and we are serving students. Throughout these 2 questions, it was very evident that these stakeholders that we interviewed understood the significance of student voice and its importance in educational settings. I will now pass it on to Alietta to discuss questions 3 through 5.
Thank you, Eva. Well, on question number 3 was, what current initiatives are on the way to increase student voice? We received a variety of responses focusing primarily on the counseling and the importance of offering it at each educational level. However, many spoke of the struggle of lack of feedback. They need to have conversation with students face-to-face, which out the technological barrier was a well-seen problem as well. So because of these reasons, I will quote a middle school student who talks about a solution that is already being implemented at the middle school that helps prevent these problems and increases student voices. We have a 30-minute social and emotional learning class every day. We call it advisory. So we start with mindfulness practices, and then we go into lessons about seeing things like individuality and self-expression, those kind of things. We do check-in weekly. We also have community circle times every Thursday where we get together, and it's like 10 to 15 students and 1 adult. We capture a lot of student voices in these too, because we get into moments where you kind of get stuck into being honest when it's like a comfortable environment. Continuing with question number 4, how do you feel that meaningful student voice could be implemented in education? They all agree that by letting students talk and listening to what they have to say. And I will quote, a student voice is not just a voice. It's the beginning of a plan of action to progress forward. Students are the ones that are helping move things. Not just a student on the board. Listen to what they have to say and attack the problems they're having and get them to be part of the process. I love this response. Getting to the 5th and final questions, what, if anything, holds you back from inputting student voice into decisions in your school/community? Some talk about how difficult it was to create well-developed students-teacher relationships, and others state that it was hard to reach a final decision with so many stakeholders to listen to and agree with. I quote from a director superintendent, I see nothing especially related to student voice holds me back. I think, though, it is wise in making decisions that are going to impact a large group of people that you take input from many stakeholders. So it is important to listen to students, but it's also important to listen to parents and educators and your community business partners. So I think it's important to incorporate a student voice in that decision making, but also relying on other stakeholders before you make an overall decision that is going to impact a lot of people. Thank you so much. Now we'll pass it to India Young for a conclusion.
Thank you. So as we come to the end of our 1-year project on student voice, it is important to reflect on what we've learned and why it matters. Student voice is all about giving students a say in the decisions that affect their lives. It means empowering students to share their ideas, perspectives, and concerns. During our project, we've seen the power of student voice in action. We've heard from students, staff, and administrators and their viewpoints. Though our project is coming to an end, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We believe that student voice is crucial to creating a school community that truly reflects the needs and aspirations of all students. That is why we urge our council members to continue the conversation about student voice in your districts and keep pushing for change. With our pacing guide, Kentucky school districts can create a more inclusive and fair educational system that truly meets the needs of all learners no matter our differences. We must continue to advocate for student voice and work towards creating a system that values and prioritizes the perspectives of our students. On behalf of the Student Advisory Council, we would like to thank everyone for the countless support throughout this project, and we look forward to working together with the districts to make our school system a better place for all students statewide. Now we would like to open our current conversation up for questions from both our audience as well as the council itself.
I'll ask a question. Was there anything about your project that you learned that surprised you?
I can take that. I think doing these interviews, it was really surprising to see how receptive every single person we interviewed was to the idea of student voice, because when you're saying things related to student voice in state legislators or other initiatives like councils across the state, they often face a lot of backlash. And I think that this project just really underscores why we need to keep this conversation going, because if more people are talking about it, it's going to receive more support and things can actually be implemented into action.
To answer that as well, I was genuinely shocked by the research that we had done on student voice, on the clear benefits in almost every aspect of the educational experience. It seemed to me like oftentimes when you are researching a topic, there are varying points of view and varying degrees of different conclusions. But in my research, student voice was unanimously described as something that had proven effects that were beneficial for students. And that to me is a rarity to find something like that. That we know will work.
Yeah, something that everybody agrees upon is pretty
Yes.
unique, isn't it? Yeah.
So you mentioned a pacing guide that can help the Board of Education kind of implement this. Can you go a little bit more into detail about what that guide entails, like how it will help them?
So I can take that one. So basically the pacing guide is the 5 questions that our groups used individually to interview our stakeholders, and just a little bit going like deeper into how it can be used. One of the kind of things that we brought up was kind of taking it to the different districts and their board of education, to allow different stakeholders, including parents, students, visitors on the outside, community members, as well as the board members, to kind of be able to discuss those 5 questions that we talked about, mainly because those open the questions in a strategic way to where everyone is thinking about student voice, not just the students. We want the community members, we want the board members, we want the teachers who are working with the students, we want the principals, the assistant principals, we want everyone thinking about how student voice can be implemented and what is holding them back. So those 5 questions are listed at the end of our article, for any of the districts to feel free to use.
Are there any other questions?
I'll take a question. Well, first off, y'all did a great job. It was so good that there almost weren't any questions. But so you talked about getting it out to districts, and I think that is the perfect idea. And then, of course, I was on the council last year when we did the school safety project, and getting it out to districts was really cool. And so how do you plan to get it to the school boards and to the administrators and into the schools, rather than, you don't want it, today is great and it gets recorded and it gets sent out, but you don't want it to get forgotten because it's so good. And so how do you plan to get it to the schools itself, whether that's through students or actually through the department?
I can just volunteer. I would say the answer might be you. The answer is that because we are students in this position, we can come back to our districts and say, we are on this council and we have this report. It's very well done. It proves itself to be reputable. And at the end, we have these questions. We'd like you to spend some time doing a working group, perhaps. The initiative for this, I think, can start with us. And whether through the department to come through on the other side of, say, teachers and administrators, coming in with these questions on the student side is, as we see, is the way to bring it into schools.
To add to that, you don't have, while it starts with us, I know not all of us are in positions of leadership where we actively make change at our schools. So just making sure you communicate with your fellow students who maybe are in that position will really help things along.
And as far as with the department, of course, we will share this with our leadership team here at the Kentucky Department of Education. Also with Dr. Fletcher, as he arrives, we'll share it with him and with the Kentucky Board of Education. So we'll share your good work with all those groups.
Well, Francis, go ahead.
Not to put you on the spot, but kind of talking about that and also with the sharing aspect, like once that is done, is there a way that we're going to be maybe next year when the next school year goes by, we're going to be seeing and kind of just testing to see how the implementation of some of these questions have been, or if not, I think it'd be a really good idea just as a council, just to come up with an idea of how to make sure that student voice is really being implemented.
I think that's a great point, and definitely by just having these follow-up conversations next year on the council to see how it's been going, I think are going to be very vital, because we don't have to only present this work once. There's going to be so many more opportunities in the upcoming school year. Potentially, we can present this as a council to the Kentucky Board of Education or other groups in power to really be more effective, because I think when it's one individual, like sharing it with their principal, they're not going to listen. But when you have an entire room of students, the power is in our hands, and we can really use that to be effective. So we have an entire year ahead to keep this going.
I will kind of add to that because, like, I know some people in this room are seniors. I myself am a senior. Like, I kind of have learned from some other people the work within your K through 12 school. Like, it doesn't have to stop once you graduate. You are still an alumni of there, and they will still be receptive to what you have to say. So you can still push this next school year, even if you're not attending that school anymore.
And if there are no other questions, we just want to thank you all so much for listening and taking your time to be here.
Thank you, Council, for all of your hard work this past year, exploring and thinking through next steps for the project as well. I will now turn it over to Karen Dodd, our Chief Performance Officer, who in a related conversation will be leading you all through an activity on continuing efforts to collect student voice.
Thanks, Glippy. Good morning, everyone. That's actually a perfect segue for us. I have with me Tammy Schiff with Gray Matters. I have Donnie Tran and Gretchen. I have to get right next to me. Gretchen Morgan. Gretchen and Donnie are with our partners, Center for Innovation in Education. And they are also part of our Kentucky United We Learn Council. Who has heard of the Kentucky United We Learn Council? Oh, yay, thank you. I know that I've presented to this group before, so I'm very glad that you all acknowledge that you've heard of it. We have a couple folks here who are part of our council. Let's see, can I ask either Justin or Bentley to share a little bit about how you feel student voice is being received in the student council or in the Cool Council?
I would love to. So the Cool Council is very cool. So when I went in, if you don't know about the Kentucky United We Learn Council, it's like a group of like 70 to 75, almost 80. There's department members, there's teachers, there's principals, superintendents, there's students, there's parents. If you think about them in the community, they're probably in the room and represented somehow. So I walk into the Cool Council, one of 10 or so students, and I was like, well, these adults, they're probably going to be kind of set in their ways. Like, yeah, I'll probably speak up, but will they listen to me? Who knows? Well, they did. It was very cool at the beginning when students would actually stand up and they started giving reflections at the end of the council meetings, and we kind of realized that the more of the reflections were coming for students rather than coming from adults, because they were actually saying, teachers were and administrators were saying these great ideas, and students were like, whoa, this isn't going to work very well, let's try this. And they were like, well, let's try this. And it's actually gone in the right direction. In my opinion, it's gone in the perfect direction. And so then you split off into three working groups. And they actually elected me as chair of the Vibrant Learning Working Group. And I was maybe one of two students. Rima, you were kind of in that group. One or two or three of us were only in there, and the rest were adults. And they were like, oh, well, let's have a kid be in charge. And so that went well. And I know Bentley was vice chair of one of his working groups. I'm the chair. No, he's the chair now. Okay. I'm sorry, Bentley. And so they really took in student voice very, very seriously. And it's a great council. And if you ever get the chance to join it, I highly encourage you to join it.
Thank you so much, Justin. I didn't even pay him to say that. Bentley, Rima, anything you want to add? You don't have to.
Just cool, it's cool.
Cool is cool. All right. Well, we really want to piggyback off of what you all have done with your Student Voice project and would like to help you continue that through the Kentucky United We Learn Council. One of the things we want to do is continue to hear from students, but we also recognize that being a part of the council is a huge commitment. And I know a lot of times our students aren't able to be there. You should be putting school first, and we want you to do that. So when we have you here for opportunities like this today, we want to take advantage of that and do what we can to hear from you and to give you an opportunity to pull in other student voices. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you can help us and further what you're already doing with Student Voice. So I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen. Do you want to go to the video? Or
I'll introduce the project first. Good morning. I'm Gretchen Morgan. It's nice to be with you all. I haven't joined you before. What a pleasure. Former high school principal, so this room feels really good to me. Nice to be with you. So one of the working groups of the COOL Council is a community engagement group. And this emerged really because members of the COOL Council felt like, although it is a really inclusive group in the way you described, there are students there, there are parents there, there are community members there who are not educators, and of course there are educators there. Even though that group is pretty inclusive, it still is the group of people who can make it to a 2-day meeting in Frankfurt, right? Which means it's on, like, just in its nature, it can't be totally inclusive. And that there are voices that need to be brought into those conversations that just aren't going to be able to make it to those meetings. So we started a little project, and we're sharing our start with you with the intention of asking you all to contribute, as Karen mentioned, and we're calling it the Community Voice Project. And what we did is we started with myself and a couple of other partners from KnowledgeWorks, which is another partner to the to this effort. We got in a car and we drove around central Kentucky because that was as far as we could get in 2 days. So we know already we didn't reach as far out as we should. And we visited some schools and we sat down and we interviewed, just like you did in your Student Voice work. We interviewed students and teachers and administrators. We want to reach a wider range of students, a broader sort of view of the state. We want to reach more families. We want to reach more community members. We want to reach, we have some like dual language speakers in here, but we'd like to reach more of those. Like there's more reaching that should be done, but it's a start. And what we did was go out and interview them and record their voices in an audio recording. And we have a sample of those that we can share with you. I do also want to mention that we have transcripts. So everything that's audio recorded, we also have transcribed. And this, when we play this one, you'll see that it's actually made into a video with transcription on the screen. But when people come to the meeting, the idea is we're going to have all these posters. You guys want to hold them up real quick? That have sort of themes from the discussions and QR codes so that people can go around with their own devices and just hear voices, hear student voices, hear teacher voices, talking about things that we know we care about in the COOL Council, talking about the graduate profile, talking about feeling belonging at school and in their community, talking about accountability and what they really feel accountable for and what they want to feel accountable for in their communities. So we're going to share this little sample with you, and then I'm going to share with you the little tool that we used. I'm so interested in your interview questions now. I'm like, oh, let's compare. Maybe we can learn something from your questions. But I want to share the guide with you and then give you a chance actually to interview one another while we're together today so that you know how to do it, get an audio recording and then submit it to us because we plan to do this again. So we've gathered one group of voices for this meeting, which is happening starting tomorrow. There'll be another meeting in the fall, and we'd like to have a much broader range of voices that we can share and have in the room with us. Again, with the purpose of just being grounded. Like we are going to start our day tomorrow hearing these voices, and there'll be times in the agenda when people go out and just listen again because we want to make sure we remember who we are working for when we're together at the COOL Council. So, belabored introduction perhaps, but could we play the video?
I definitely think now they're getting better with, throughout the 4 years, pushing people to actually develop those 6 skills. I don't know if some people, maybe they don't really care about having those skills, they just care about putting the presentation, doing well in the presentation, which like, yes, obviously you need to know how to present well, but you know, maybe they don't really care about the skills, maybe just pushing to really why these skills are important, why are we using these 6 skills, and I don't know, you know, there's all types of things when it comes to people with maybe they're not the best presenters, but they've done this thing, or maybe I don't know how to get it. but I mean, I'm looking forward to presenting my senior POG because I think I've developed a lot of good things in those 6 areas to present. So I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward.
I'm pushing myself to new learning. Even though like in the process we're teaching other people in the class, but at the same time we're learning too while we're doing it. And we always like discover a lot of new things, and whenever we do passion projects, I notice that class like gives their full attention and is really kind when like us presenting.
We have a lot of students that love to just jump right in and just put something down to have something down, and this has really forced them to slow down, show what they understand, what they know. And I know a lot of them were catching their mistakes when they were planning, and it helped to get it all down, see their mistake, and fix it before it's on the poster. And I think it just really, it forced them to dissect it and slow down for those kids. So.
And show all of the pieces, all the work to the pieces.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, if you're having a problem, the teacher will usually like talk to you and ask you, like if a teacher seems like looks at you and seems that you're off, they will ask about your day. They will take time out of their time to come talk to you and ask you, oh, how are you? How's your day? Yeah. Are you good? Like you seem off today. And they will talk to you. They're not really like, oh, you seem off. Get back to work. They'll be like, oh, I see that you got something going on. You could take an off day. And it's the fact that they love you and they take care of you. And instead of like being a normal teacher and teaching, they also like communicate with you and they understand what's going on. And Mr. Miller, our principal, he also takes time.
I think we feel very accountable to the whole child, not just what is assessed on state accountability assessments, high stakes testing. We use iReady, we use CERT. The ACT is next week. All of those pieces are important, but also ensuring that those students sitting right there are having experiences that will shape them into global citizens, into lifelong learners, into effective communicators. And I hope that when you interview them, you see that that's what's happening. I would think you could interview a kindergarten student in this district and see that that's what's happening. We are creating individual humans, not all humans that look the same and act the same and talk the same and walk the same. And I think that's what we're accountable for, is ensuring that they're ready when they leave here, but also ensuring that they're ready.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Where we had talked about the criminal behavior and how different aspects of someone's life could lead to crime and deviance. And it really brings to perspective about how, like, we talked about the racial and classist biases in the justice system, and how some people only see one person's environment as a act of why they act the way they did, and about just them being their psychological to their environmental aspect of their life, of why they're a convict and how it feels after prison and after being convicted. And really, like, just doing all that research, it really enhances like the viewpoint of our world today of what it feels like to be outside and inside the justice system, since we only see what's on TV.
I had a similar experience this year. It was like I was really nervous going into it, but I just was really prepared for it. And so once I made my slideshow and realized that I did have information that could fit each of the categories, I realized my weaknesses and where I could improve, but I also had quite a few strengths that I could present to them, and they gave me really good feedback on it. And so once I finally finished it, I was relieved and excited about it and excited for my future. But I also have to notice those weaknesses that I did have.
Sure.
And yeah, so that's been helpful because I like can now realize, oh, this is where I might need to ask for more help, or can have my teachers help me to better like prepare myself for this for the next year.
Hey, that's a little sample. We have 11 posters full of QR codes of voices from people that we're going to share with folks and have, again, to just help us remember why we are together and who we are working for. But we came to you today because, again, we're kind of hoping you all will help us, again, broaden the group of voices that are there. I think you all are a group of students who are very engaged in what's going on in public education in your state. And hearing from you and your voices today is great. And also there are students who are not going to be in something like the Commissioner's Advisory, who we also need to hear from. And we bet that you know some of them and are friends with some of them and have relationships where you could reach out and have some conversations to make sure we're hearing really from everybody. So what's being passed around now is just a little guide about like how to do this, how to collect a voice and share it with us so that it can be included in upcoming Cool Council meetings. I want to highlight a couple of things. One is on the front page in blue. There's an email address. It's lauren+voices@leadingwithlearning.org. That goes to Lauren Ho, who's on our team, who lovingly collects these and also cuts them into pieces so that, you know, if we have a long conversation with someone, we can cut out some of the ums and I don't knows and let me think for a minute. So Lauren does that work and prepares them. So once you've recorded a clip, that's where to send it. These are pretty quick conversations. If you want to have longer conversations, you may, but actually quick conversations work pretty well for just hearing someone's impression of something, which we hope makes it a little less daunting to decide to do, but also for the person to agree to speak with you. So you just are asking for a few minutes of their time. There's a description here of kind of the approach, which explains that we tried to write these questions in a way that invites someone to tell us a story. Questions that invite people to tell stories often tell us a little bit more about how they felt in their experience, and those are useful for us to hear about. And then there are interview questions, which, like I said, I'm anxious to read your interview questions as well. And our group is actually meeting, our working group is meeting at the Cool Council this week, and we plan to do some continued revision to these based on having tried them. But we put a few notes in here based on what we learned from when we tried them. Those are little highlighted notes. Like, for example, the first question that's here in the student set of questions, take a second and think about a time when you felt really excited about what you were learning, or when learning something was really fun. Can you tell me the story of that learning? That turned out to be a great opener question. Everybody had something. Sometimes what came up was like, oh, there's just this one teacher, and in their room we do these things, right? And that was the entry. It was exciting. Sometimes it was content they're really passionate about. The one that you heard that was about the criminal justice system, that was somebody who was like, oh, we did this research. That was really important to me. I was really happy to learn about that. I want to tell you all about it. So it's a great opener question. That might be one you want to try with each other as we do practice here in just a little bit. But there are also questions for teachers and school leaders and district leaders, for family members, for community and business leaders. This is a group that we know we need to hear more from in the Cool Council. So, you know, talking to folks in your community and asking them some questions, especially as we work on trying to imagine a different way to hold schools and districts accountable. It really matters what those folks think too, right? Our schools are meant to be accountable to their communities. So how can we hear from those voices? And I will say for business folks, it's very hard for them to find 2 days when they can come and sit with us at a meeting in this building. So we need a different way to hear from them, just like we need a different way to hear from a broader range of students. So they're included here too. So this is the tool. In terms of capturing these, we just used whatever audio recording tool we had on our phone.
Do you have a phone with them?
Everybody have a phone?
Do you have a recorder on your phone?
Do you have your voice memo app or something?
Yeah. Yes. If you don't, you can go out to the Play Store and just download Voice Recorder. Mine's an Android. That's what mine is called, Voice Recorder. Downloaded very quickly.
On an iPhone, the voice memo app works just fine. And in those apps, you can send directly from the apps. You record in the app, and then, you know, there's some in an Apple phone, it's the little square with the arrow that's like, I want to send it somewhere. I don't know what it is in your phone. Your phone is like an alien phone to me. I don't know what the buttons are inside that phone. But there's a way to send, and you just send straight from the app, put it to Lauren's email address, which is in the document here. That's all you need to do to share them. So first, any questions about either like the whole of what we're trying to do or like, hey, how might I go about doing this? And we really do want you just to practice interviewing each other because it's good to practice. And actually, it's nice to hear from someone like about a powerful learning experience. That's a great question to ask. You can also ask questions about belonging. You can ask questions about the graduate profile. You can ask questions about whatever you want and share about whatever you want. Yeah.
But when would you want these by?
I'm sorry, can you
When
say-
would you want these by?
Anytime between now and the fall, actually. Our next meeting is in November?
November.
And we need about a month to get it ready. So I'm going to say by end of October. Thanks for asking. I should have said that.
Are these questions more designed for a longer response that'll be cut down to say an impactful sentence? Or is it open to say follow-up questions to? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious in terms of you're asking the question, should you expect a shorter response or a longer story that it will be cut down by you all?
My experience testing these questions has been, usually it's an invitation for folks and they tell a story about something and it works pretty well. But there definitely were times when I had to ask a follow-up question, talking to a fourth grader about their passion project. I'd be like, tell me a story about your passion project. And they would be like, I'm really into otters. And I'd be like, say more, So feel free to ask follow-up questions if you need to. You just want to hear their story, right? So ask follow-ups if you need to be able to hear their story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When sending these, would you like the names of the people that we interviewed, or is
thanks.
this anonymous?
Yeah, there's directions about that in here. It is anonymous, but tell us like the type of person you're talking to. Like this is a high school student. And we also ask that you let us know, like, I think this is about belonging. There's some categories in here. If you just provide us with that label, that helps us a lot know what you and they thought this story was about so that we categorize it the way you and they would most like later. So yeah, just like high school student, graduate profile. Thank you.
So I like what you did with the questions where you like break it down with graduate student and deeper learning. Is this also like, does this also correspond like when you start like taking these recordings into action, and how do you do that? Like, is it like implementation to education, or is this just like what's your approach?
Yeah. So those categories help us decide how to create the posters they were holding up before, with the idea being at the Cool Council, if I'm a member of the Cool Council and I'm really curious about deeper learning, I can go to a poster that says deeper learning. And there I can hear from students and teachers and maybe community members who sat on a presentation panel or something. And I can hear a lot of different things about that to help inform me as I think about what might we do with that as we think about accountability in the state. So that's the intended use, and those categories just help us organize for them so that they can access the information easily.
And I should have mentioned, a new accountability model is what the Cool Council is all about. So
that's its jam.
Instead of just thinking about getting graded or getting evaluated on your ACT or on your K-Prep score, it's not K-Prep anymore, state assessment. We're trying to look at what is the right thing to measure when it comes to a student. So that's where this is all kind of generated from, and we want the input from all of you, like what's important to you. So that's kind of where these questions, they're called empathy questions or empathy interviews. So by telling a story, we're able to pull out of that what's most important to students or to parents, to teachers. To get to what really is going to matter ultimately in an accountability system.
How does one join the council? Like application based or?
You can contact me, Karen Dodd. Happy to sign you up.
Okay. Yeah.
When interviewing, if they ask for any information to contact you guys forward, are we allowed to give them this email or any?
Sure. Yeah. You are welcome to share that email.
Can we provide multiple recordings?
Yes, please do.
Hundreds.
Yeah, you can. I will say, if you're going to do many of them, it is helpful, if you can remember to do this, to just pause your recording periodically so that what we get is like little recordings. 5 little recordings is a lot easier for Lauren.
5 minute
one
max
really long.
probably on one recording.
Yeah, try and cut it. It just makes her job easier. And it's not hard for us to do, so it seems nice.
All right, so we are going to ask you all to pair up, pick a question out of the high school students, and just interview each other real quick using your recorder. So if you wouldn't mind just practicing, get comfortable with that, and then if you have any more questions after you've practiced, you can let us know. You can use some space in here. You can spread out. You can go into the hallways. There's a collaboration area right behind us here. So if you just want to pair off and give this a try, and all of us will be walking around. If you have any questions, we can help you out. All right, we'll just take about 5 minutes to do that. So each interview each other for 1 to 2 minutes. Sound good?
It's just quick practice.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Did you learn anything?
Yes.
What did you learn?
He was telling me about a project he does for his FBLA club, and I'm gonna be president of my FBLA club next year, so I'm gonna take that idea and use it for our club as well.
Awesome.
Nice.
What else? I saw other heads. Who else learned something? I saw a lot of nods. Now you don't want to talk about it?
Or heard a story that you think is
Yeah. Go ahead.
I learned about using opportunity of the Henry Clay High School Student Congress. We're talking about opportunity to learn more about civics and public policy and that kind of thing, and that actually helped instead of increasing interest in public in their current career path, instead being a lesson to know that this might not be what I'm interested in, but still being a valuable experience for them.
Yep. Knowing what you don't want to do is just as important as knowing what you want to do. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah.
I'm just gonna comment. We talked about like practical courses you can take that can actually help you outside of school. And I mean, in my head, I thought financial literacy, but I wasn't expecting her to also say financial literacy, even though it is so practical. And I think that's just like a nod to like the new changes, like financial literacy courses are needed and necessary. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. The commissioner and I were just on a visit to Model Lab on Monday, and we heard one of the graduating students talking about, talking about financial literacy, and created his own website for financial literacy. So definitely hearing that y'all are on the. I'm glad you want to learn about that. I wish I had learned more about that.
Parents will be glad to.
Yes, absolutely. I wish my kids would know more about that. So, all right, I think that's all we.
I think that's it. Again, we just really would appreciate any interviews that you go and gather and share with us, and let folks know, like, we will share their voices with the Cool Council, and they will be part of inspiring the focus of that group. That's really the goal here.
And if you do want to know more about the Cool Council, let Glippy know, and Glippy will get you my information. Yes.
Would you like us to share our recordings from now to?
Yeah, please send what you just did.
Yes.
Yeah. Please. Use that Lauren plus Voices email address.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen and team, for that activity and the information there. And as she noted, I will share with you all in our follow-up contact information. And if you are interested in learning more about the Kentucky United We Learn Council, I'll share that in our exit slip today. At this point, we are moving really into the tail end of our meeting. And again, this is our last meeting as a council for the 2023-2024 school year. So at this time, and knowing that we have lunch planned for about noon, we have about 18 minutes to be specific. This is an opportunity really just to invite some feedback or updates, really some member sharing announcements. Is there anything that you think would be beneficial for your peers here in the room, for your peers across Kentucky, things happening in your district, in your school, or opportunities that you would like to share out so others can hear? This is sort of an open floor opportunity. And really feel free to volunteer, and also our members online if you want to unmute or share in the chat. So we'll take a few minutes here just to share, member sharing. I'll see Sophia first.
So my school recently started our GSA, Gender Sexual Orientation Alliance, and we've found that not many people are aware of it yet, but we're looking at doing a program where we'll do pen pals with other GSAs in different schools in our district and maybe around Kentucky, so that students feel like they have a wider support network of kids who are going through the same thing that they are right now, figuring themselves out. And if anyone wanted to maybe be a part of that, I can pass that information along to our sponsor, or just, let me know if you're interested.
Are there any other comments? Yes, Nick, Justin.
So just so I'm not preaching to the choir, how many people in here have sources of strength in their school? Okay, if you don't, you need to go back to your administrators like tomorrow and ask them to put sources of strength in your school, because that program is like super amazing. It's student led, and it's a mental health program that doesn't focus on the negatives. So like it focuses really on the positive things that you can do to address mental health. And there's a pinwheel with all kinds of like different things that you can work on, like family support and spirituality and going outside, physical activity. And so like at my school, we have a big bulletin board in the front of the school, and we decorate it each month with like a new piece of the wheel, like what you can do this month. And like we put like helpful tips to like help address stress and stuff. And then we have meetings. So definitely take it back to your administrators about sources of strength and ask them to look into it. And so, yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you. Gabriella.
Along with the sources of strength thing, I'm a part of my schools, and we just had like a big event where, since our school is a lot smaller, we were able to do this. But when the kids would go through the tables that were led by the group members of sources of strength, they got like a little thing to put in their treat bag. Like everyone got a marigold plant, because a lot of kids don't live on farms or anything. So it was like the first time they could keep a plant alive. Everyone got a stress ball, everyone got a journal, everyone got stationery to use the journal. I just feel like if your school has the ability to put on something like that and maybe take a day out of the school year to just really focus on sources of strength, I think it's very impactful.
Thank you. Any other share outs? I see a hand, but can't quite tell. India, thanks.
I just wanted to extend a very big congratulations to anyone in this room, as well as anyone across the Commonwealth who has been accepted into a governor's program. As an alum of GSE, I know these programs are not only rigorous, but they're also very opportunity based. So you should be incredibly proud of yourself for getting accepted to GSA, GSE, or GSP. I know I've heard a lot of great things about GSP and about GSA, and I can speak on experiences from GSE. So if you are accepted to any of those programs, I know they just announced everyone who was accepted, so congratulations.
I think as we continue, pursuing student voice, we should always remember the grades below us. With a lot of the work that I've done, I've seen it's been very high school focused, very 9th through 12th grade. What did the high school teachers have to say, the high school principals? But I think it's important to include everyone K through 12, from like the kindergarten teachers to the kindergartners themselves, because even though it might not be in the language that, a typical high schooler would use, what they have to say is still just as important to our educational experience.
Any other comments before I missed a hand. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Mine's more of like a question for you all, but next year I'm trying to start a Black student union at my school, because I attend like a predominantly white school, but because of like an influx of incoming immigrants and refugees, we've had like a growing population of colored people. And so if you all have anything like that at your schools, please let me know and like give me tips, or like what you all do, even if you're not a part of it, like just if you hear about it. Because like it would be the first time I think anything in my county has done it, so that would help. And then another thing is I attended, it was called like the Jostens Renaissance or something in Nashville a few weeks ago, and it's basically like a program that like tries to advise high schools on how they can like increase like school morality and stuff like that. And one of the biggest takeaways that my school got that we're going to try to convince administrators is, I'm sure like the first day of school for like those who are not seniors and like who are actually going to go back to school next year, like the first day of school has always been like so like groggy and like, yeah, we're excited to go back to school, but then you like go sit in your classroom and it's just like syllabus and stuff. So if y'all could like talk to your administrators and try to get them to do like because for my county we have like 3 days of school for the first week, like we start on Wednesday, and so like those 3 days could be like pep rally, like fun, like really start the year off on like a good foot so that you can like increase morality, like start it off good, not just like sitting in your classroom and like syllabus and rules and introductions to your teacher. So start off on a good note. I would recommend y'all tell your administrators to do that.
Okay, this kind of plays off of that, but something we've done this year, like our school started, is like for KSA testing, it's like juniors and seniors, and so like sophomores and juniors. So for seniors, it's not really a waste of days, but it's kind of like you go sit in a classroom. But this year they started like adulting classes is what they're calling it. I don't know if other schools do this, but it's like financial literacy, kind of playing on that. And it's like how to be an adult, how to pay taxes, how to, so that way those days kind of aren't a waste for us seniors. Like it still gives us a reason to go to school instead of just skipping, you know, or just sitting in a classroom. So I thought that was a cool opportunity that we're doing this year. So.
I think that's, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I also had a question. So I would like to get more into like the medical field and more programs relating to that matter. I was wondering if either of you guys knew anything about that, just because of my age, it's been a little hard to get involved. So if any of you guys had any recommendations or into that field, that'd be really great. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for sharing and contributing a lot of ideas and opportunities, and also some follow-up in our group by email as well. And at this point, I believe we are kind of coming to the end. So Commissioner Kinney, I can turn the floor over to you for some final remarks with our last minutes, if you will, with our council.
Thank you so much. As we conclude the meeting today, I thought we would take a little bit of trip down memory lane for all the things that you all have done in the past year as your service. And I am going to refer to some notes because you have done a lot. So you should be proud of your accomplishments, and we are certainly appreciative here at the Kentucky Department of Education that you've given us your time and your talents to really make us think as adults the important voice of students. So today is your last meeting, and so that's a little daunting, I know, especially for some of you seniors. And we've talked a lot about the council itself and how the makeup makes it so special. Not only the individuality of each of you, but the perspectives that you bring from each of your school districts. So we certainly appreciate that. Of course, we've got sophomores on here, we've got some juniors, and we've got some seniors. More than 30 members representing 26 different school districts. So that's really, really rich and valuable when we have discussions like this, that we have such different perspectives. Just as we reflect back, you've spent more than 20 hours with KDE during your meetings this year. And I'm going to kind of go over some of the highlights, and I hope you'll reflect back with me some of the things that you all talked about. Last September, you met with Dr. Judy Vanderhall, and Judy was here with us again today. But as Justin said, at that time, you were talking about sources of strength. So that was a really important program that uses those peer leaders and influence to talk about things going on in your schools. And of course, Judy was here again today to talk about substance abuse and vaping with us. Another really important project, which I had a lot of interest in, was the annual Safe Schools report that you all worked on. And we used that report and the voices that you shared with us on that with our leadership team here. We talk about that. So your input is very, very valuable to us. You met regularly with our members of our staff from the Division of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Really important focus on student social, mental, and physical health. And so we heard a lot from them during your tenure. You learned about new pathways in our Office of Career and Technical Education. You also talked with Commissioner David Couch about AI and what that was. And I'll tell you, we learned so much from that discussion, because in many ways, students are so much further ahead
than us when you all come to technology and how to use it for the good, and also help us spotting things where it may not be so good. And so to allow us to share that. You met with Kevin Daly, our 2024 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and talked to him about educators that had made a difference in your lives. And that was a really special discussion as you reflected back. I remember the energy that as he was having that discussion with you, and your eyes would light up when you talked about one of your favorite teachers. And several of you participated in a special committee to make recommendations about the next student member of the Kentucky Board of Education, because that's coming up. And we've got some past people that have been on our Kentucky Board of Education. That voice on the Kentucky Board of Education is so important. And we have had the good fortune of all of our student members being very active participants in that. And so they bring the voices of all of you to the Kentucky Board. And then you worked on your project that has kind of culminated today as far as sort of that first step. And we've talked about how we're going to use that together to bring your voices even forward even more. All this shows your commitment to education for yourself, but also for your peers and other students, which is really, really important. And, I didn't get called on the reflection and gratitude piece, but on my journaling, where I was thinking about that first question, because I do feel it is such an honor and privilege to have been able to sit with you and learn and listen from you. But, the first question is, what is one thing you have learned from the advisory experience? And I'll tell you what I have learned. I have learned that the future of Kentucky is bright, that Kentucky kids can do anything. I would put us up against anybody in the country. And you're talented academically, but equally, I see the compassion in each of you and the empathy in each of you. You want to do well for yourselves and your community, but you're also really concerned about your peers. And so to have the heart of a Kentucky student is what has been so impressive to me about this group of students. So as we think about kind of ending for the year, of course, want to thank Rima and Bentley for being our chair and co-chair this year. Of course, we wish you the very best as you head into whatever life's next adventures are, whether it's the summer and you're doing cool things over the summer. You're coming back to your district to continue to help them as you move forward. Or if you're going on to a college, university, or a workplace, of course, we wish you the very, very best. And we have a little something for you for our seniors. We're going to do a little recognition, and we're going to give cords that you can wear at graduation that show that you were a member of the Commissioners Advisory Council and our appreciation for your service. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Glyptis Ann, and she will proceed with all the rest of the cords and the recognition and then lunch that will be served.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mic's not on. Thank you, Commissioner, for those remarks and reflection. And so we're about to adjourn the meeting. So before we dismiss, we are going to head out into the hallway. And we will have, as the Commissioner mentioned, some cords and also certificates of recognition for your roles here. We do want to say thank you. I know several of you are commenting about how the end of the year is really just a few weeks away. So we wish you the very best as you conclude your school year, and thank you for your time here on the council. For those who are joining us again in the fall, returning as members on the council, please look forward to additional communication from me. And we do look forward to announcing our new members to join our 24-25 council next month. So look for an announcement. We anticipate that will go out next month. And so that now concludes our meeting, our final meeting of the year. And so we will head out, and we're going to go sort of left out of the doorway. So thank you all, and meeting's adjourned.